country? Well,
first of all, I would say that I'm serving Senegal by being here. My work covers a number of countries. As I said, there are the French-speaking nations, which include Senegal. You don't have to actually be in your country to be working for your country. You can also do that in many ways. I have other commitments besides Francophonie, as I also work at the New Sorbonne, and many of my students are Senegalese. Finally, I would simply say that they haven't asked me yet.
Well, that's the end of the show. Thanks for watching. If you want to see it again, just click on our site, www.initiative-africa.com. I'll be back next week, same time, same channel, with the same pleasure, with another edition of Business Africa, your partner with the continent's economy. I'm Omar Barry. Bye for now.
Independent television.
Good morning. Happy Democracy Day, Nigeria. My name is Benga Aruleba. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this very special edition of Focus Nigeria. Indeed, the focus today is on Nigeria as we observe the 13th anniversary of unbroken transition to transition in Nigeria. It was exactly 30 years ago that Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, at about this time, took the oath of office at the Eagle Square here in Abuja as the second democratically elected executive president of Nigeria, signaling a full return to democracy. At the beginning, the journey was rough, very rough. The future was indeed very doubtful, as the new practitioners of the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, struggled to understand each other's roles. The frictions, particularly between the executive and the legislative arms, were constant and worrisome. From disputes over what the legislators should earn as sundry allowances, to the leadership of the legislative arm and how it should emerge, to how states as the federating units should conduct their affairs without interference from the federal. The first 8 years of democracy were indeed very rough. But thankfully, the military, having stayed in power for almost 30 years, had exhausted all their goodwill and had lost the moral courage to strike at the slightest manifestation of a constitutional crisis. This, no doubt, allowed the judiciary the opportunity of separating the disputants and put democracy back on course. Now, it's 30 years on this path, and as I said, the journey has been tortuous. There have been so many challenges, so many missed opportunities, wasted public goodwill, and avoidable losses. But again, there has been tremendous achievements, top of which the freedom to object, make demands, and be heard. Economically, we have also made some modest gains. Even though today national security remains a huge challenge, but there are reasons to hope for the best, as the government says it is laying the concrete foundation for what promises a total transformation. These policy measures are in critical areas such as the economy, power, agriculture, education, and even in infrastructural development. While these policies are being evolved and entrenched in some cases, what are the low-hanging fruits that Nigerians can feed on while waiting for this rosy future to manifest? We'll be reviewing all of this shortly, particularly the last 1 year. when the Honorable Minister of Information, Comrade Labaran Baku, joins me to X-ray 13 years of democracy in Nigeria, with particular emphasis on what the future holds for us. It's a public holiday. We hope wherever you are in the mood for this program. So we just put you in the right mood furthermore by asking you to grab a seat. Let's also set the studio by taking a quick break to usher in our special guest this morning, the Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation, Comrade Labaran Baku. Okay, if you're just joining us, it's Democracy Day in Nigeria, May 29, 2012. And it's a special edition of the program this morning. It's a public holiday as well. So we have joining us for discussions this morning the Honorable Minister of Information. Is it National Orientation? Or?
No, it's just information. National Orientation is not in the Ministry of Culture.
Okay.
Yes.
Honorable Minister of Information, Comrade Labaran Baku. I keep reminding you that I'm a comrade.
Absolutely.
And that we are not in a hurry to let you go.
No, and I'm not even. I don't intend to go.
Good to see you. Happy Democracy Day.
It's quite a pleasure, Gwenga. It's quite a pleasure, my brother.
All right.
Happy Democracy Day to all Nigerians, all the people of this country. We really wish ourselves a happy day.
Is it really a happy day? Let's start from that. What are the reasons why Nigerians should be happy?
Well, first of all, let me say this. It was, I think, Chief Awolowo who said that the worst form of civil rule is still better than the best form of dictatorship or military rule. We should be happy because in the last 30 years, for the first time in the history of our nation, we have lived under a system that is guided by the rules, that is governed by the Constitution of Nigeria, which is the ground norm for the operation of every country, of any democratic country. We have shared in the freedoms and liberties that only democracy can allow. In the last 30 years, Nigeria hasn't had political prisoners, for example, which was not the case under military rule. In the last 30 years, we have not had execution of officers involved in coups, which was always the cycle, because we lost more officers to coups in Nigeria than war. Soldiers have killed themselves. Senior officers have been killed, murdered, or executed in the course of coups. This nation has been spared this ugly scenario. In the last 13 years also, for example, speaking specifically as a journalist, we have never had it better, maybe under the first dispensation of the First Republic and Second Republic. But particularly since 1983, the last 13 years have been an example of what can happen to a society if there are freedom. Our media have been free, maybe the freest in the world, I would say. In the last 1 year of President Goodluck Jonathan's administration, we have had the media placed on at a different level with the Freedom of Information Act, which the President signed into law. Whereas under military rule, there were laws such as Decree 4 that made it criminal for any journalist to report any public issue. Today, we have a counter law saying that journalists indeed have a right, and every Nigerian indeed has a right to go to any public office and demand for information and report it. I remember that in 1985, when by July 1985, many editors were in detention in Kirikiri. We can't forget Tunde Thompson and Ndoka Rabo, who languished in jail. So this freedom that God has brought to us through this democracy should never be taken for granted. In addition to this, the country has witnessed development. We have challenges, no doubt, but Nigeria has witnessed development in the last 13 years. We must never throw the baby away with the bathwater. Let me give you an example of education. I'm from this part of the country. In the last 13 years, virtually every state in the north has established a state university. Those universities are functional. Whether you come to Nasarawa, where I am, the university is functional. In Gombe, in Bauchi, in Plateau. Now, there has been an expansion of educational opportunities, both at the primary, secondary, and tertiary levels. We have witnessed regrowth and transformation in this sector. Now, if you look at the economy of Nigeria, the shocks that were associated under the military, especially in the South years, have given way to a stable economy that is growing at 7.45%, at least between 7 and 8%, consistently in the last 3-4 years. Never the case except under Gowon, when the economy grew after the second national development plan at 11.5%. Now, under this democracy, we have been able to exit the debt trap. Nigeria in 1999 was having a huge debt burden of about $35 billion. And even to service that debt was a very major national problem. We exited the Paris debt club. Today, we're a free nation. No debt news is hanging on the necks of our children. And Nigeria has been able to recollect its autonomy to manage its own economy and plan its own development. And that is why we are now growing at about 7.5%, the highest economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, in addition to all this, if you look at recent developments, particularly in aviation, in agriculture, I have mentioned education already, in health services, in science and technology, in communication technology, there are steady progress is being recorded. In transportation, for example, we have recorded tremendous inroads in the last 1 year, which I believe Nigerians should, on this day, begin to reflect and discuss. Because the incidents, security incidences and high-tension partisan politics often distract the media and the public from focusing on the true agenda of development. We now have a president in place that looks like a normal human being before the president has to look like a monster, who, if he's coming, children should be running from the road because he's president. We have a humble president, a God-fearing president that believes that we should bring civility to governance. Now, we're beginning to see a new order. Democracy is not expected in 12 years to be perfect or address all of our nation's problems. And we still have very serious challenges. But I think the last 13 years have been a period in which we have lived in a normal society, and it will continue to improve. Also, one key thing that we must commend this nation for is that the mere fact that you now have leaders who are used to the fact that they must go. Because under the military, once somebody stages a coup and becomes a head of state or a governor, only another coup can overthrow him. Now we have a constitutional order in which Nigerians have learned to vote out governors, vote out legislators, vote out as the people they don't want. Now, if you allow this democratic dispensation to distill, which is what we expect with the electoral reforms brought on by President Goodluck Jonathan, we are going to see higher capacity in the electorate, in the governance of this country. So I think we must not forget that we have become really now, even West Africa. Look at the influence Nigeria has radiated across West Africa. Because we're a democracy, no military coup has survived in Nigeria in the last 30 years.
Oh, in the West Africa?
In the West African sub-region. Because Nigeria is not a democracy, the question of coups in West Africa, which were the normal things when you had military rule in Nigeria, it gave courage and inspiration to other people in the ECOWAS nation for soldiers to stage coups. But they now know that with a democratic government in Nigeria, no coup is viable in West Africa, and by implication in Africa. So we're having a stable region because of Nigeria's stability and democratic foundations. So let us keep faith with our nation. Because as it were now, the entire global community is looking upon Nigeria in spite of the challenges we face. More investments are coming to Nigeria than virtually any other country in the continent today.
From all the pictures you have painted, it's like looking at a cup, and depending on what perspective you want to say, either as half filled or half empty. Well, the tone of optimism is there. But a whole lot of people will say, this 13 years down the line, we should have made faster progress and all of that. And there are things that those of you who were on this side before, I keep calling you a comrade, I mean, who also fought for democracy one way or the other through the AUG and all of that. Are there things that you people are seeing, the other side that you are seeing, which those of us here are not seeing, which is why you are preaching that we should keep tolerating, that maybe the future is bright?
Well, it's not really about tolerating. It's about having a positive tone of mind. We don't say, we have never argued that the last 13 years we had a perfect society. I believe there are many areas that, looking back as leaders, as citizens, we will say we could have improved upon. We can give examples. Until 2011, our elections were too problematic, too imperfect. And democracy is about clean, clear, credible elections. I believe we could have done better with the electoral process. But from 2011, with President Jonathan, we're beginning to see a change in that direction. I will also say that in terms of the management of resources at local, state, and federal level, we could have improved on our governance index, which is that results translating from infusion of resources could give us higher services. So we have had problem with our the governance index, and this is not just about governance at the political level. The values we share as a people, because of years and years of erosion of those values under dictatorship, have been eroded. And these are the things that we are seeing sometimes today in crime, in incidences of theft of public resources. But I believe that in spite of all this, in spite of all these weaknesses that we have had, our democracy is on a stable course to higher growth. Okay. A growing awareness has come on board. Let's give an example. Under military rule, it was so difficult for you to even protest a government policy. It was difficult. I remember that as a student union leader in the mid-80s, sometimes we were stopped from organizing public lectures in the university because we were seen to be, we were tagged subversive. Today is a different order. We're having far-growing, a more confident citizenry that can express themselves, that are giving ideas to government and to themselves. Yeah. And we see a society that is moving. We should not look at it as if these 12 years are perfect, but that we are on a platform that can improve with time.
Yeah, but conversely, the other argument will be that, yes, Nigerians can express themselves, Nigerians can make demands, Nigerians can raise issues, but that's where it ends, because we have a government that is not proactive. That a lot of people will also tell you that this last 1 year has been worse off for Nigerians. Nigerians are paying more for fuel. For example, fuel is costing more than it cost a year ago. There is a prospect that in another 48 hours or so, Nigerians are going to be paying more for electricity. Not that in terms of supply that there has been a remarkable improvement in electricity supply.
Now, let me tell you one thing. All of us at a point, particularly in the 70s and 80s, we were ideologically of the opinion that government should be in control of particularly some commanding heights of the economy. Oil and gas, electricity supply and distribution, telecommunications. These areas were exclusively preserved from government, for government. And it was unlawful. Even if a Nigerian had money to set up a power plant, it was unlawful. To establish a telecom company, and it was unlawful. Now, the world has moved on, and we have seen that there were weaknesses in these decisions. When the president brought the deregulation policy in the downstream sector. Because it was immediately after an election, where opposition parties were still fresh from loss. And also there was this high expectation from citizens that the president, on coming to power, there will be a Dorado the next day. We came against a storm of sentimental opposition, which is okay. We also learned from it. But look at the reality today. Our nation has missed the opportunity after 54 years of being an oil exporting nation from developing the downstream sector of the petroleum industry, which has been the most important industry in our nation's economy for the past 50 years. Now, why will a country like Nigeria
be importing fuel?
Not be importing fuel alone, be exporting crude to Asia, to Europe, to refine and send back to us at 5-6 times the cost that they get from us. During that debate, I told people, you know, I remember David Ricardo's theory under colonial rule, that Africa was good to produce raw materials, whereas Europe was better advantaged to manufacture and send manufactured products to us. That impoverished Africa. It made resource hemorrhage from Africa huge to Europe. Now, as an independent nation with oil, our policy must be to create a downstream sector that does not target export of crude, but export of manufactured products. And the deregulation was meant to open up that sector in order that private investors will set up refineries, set up petrochemical plants, set up fertilizers plants, and make Nigeria the hub of export of petrochemical products. Now, if that becomes the case, we can grow jobs to millions. We can make the Niger Delta the hub of supply of products from that industry. It was not about increasing prices because government was still going to subsidize commuters as against the present policy. And we are the only big country today in the world producing oil that has this wrong policy, and now we have lost the benefits because, one, the new power plants, the new refineries and petrochemical factories that we have licensed for the last 10 years cannot take off until we get that policy correct. Nigeria would have been earning maybe 3-4 times what we are earning now, and with that earning, you cannot make life easier and better for the people of Nigeria. In addition to that,
I just need to stop you temporarily.
Yes.
Just to make the quality of the
debate discussion.
Yeah, better.
Yes.
There's something we need to perfect quickly. Let's take a break and we'll be right back even before you leave. Okay, the program is Focus Nigeria, Democracy Day special. Honorable Minister of Information, Labaramaku, is our guest this morning. Sorry.
Thank you, fellow Nigerians.
Yes.
Yes. Lastly, the deregulation was meant to wipe out corruption in the downstream sector. Because the subsidy has, as we have seen consistently, provided an opportunity for abuse. Apart from underdeveloping the downstream sector, it has also become a feeding pond for all kinds of things to take place. And the president, let's end this market and withdraw these resources to meet the needs of the nation by growing the economy and supporting citizens directly. Now, if we had done that, it would have been a perfect, opportunity to clean up that sector and open it up to development. Now, on the electricity tariffs, there's been a lot of misinformation around that the tariffs are meant to increase the cost of electricity for all citizens. It's not true. Now, there is a major power sector roadmap the President unveiled in 2010, which is to stabilize the electricity supply in this country through major reforms that will make it possible now for this sector to be driven by the private sector. And we took a cue from the cement reforms, from the telecoms reforms. Now, what is the roadmap to power? What are the objectives? The objectives are, one, to remove the erroneous impression that government alone will generate power, will supply power. Now, with the reforms, the private sector is now free to build their own power plants, generate power, and sell electricity to Nigerians. In addition to that, the transmission and sale of power is also going to be privatized. Now, this reform is to ensure that we get all the available resources from the private sector and government to meet the electricity needs of Nigeria. Most countries that are having stable power supply, whether it's England or America or Germany, it's the same policy. Now, in the last 3-4 years of these reforms, we now have IPP projects, independent power plants, that have been built in many parts of this country. These are gas power plants. We also have the NIPP projects, which are owned by state, local government, and federal governments. Altogether, we are building over 10 power plants in the country now. Most of them are nearing completion. Now, because these power plants are owned by private organizations, they must sell electricity and recover the money for gas, which is supplied to them, and make a profit, otherwise they are out of business. Now, as we prepare now to feed the private power generating plants the electricity from them onto the national grid, it has become imperative to review tariffs. And this review of tariffs will make it possible for them to stay in business and give us stable electricity. Well, how has the government approached it? Government has approached it from the fact that we recognize that not all Nigerians can pay the new tariffs. So what the government has done is actually to subsidize electricity for the poor in rural areas and urban areas. So the new tariffs means reduction of electricity tariffs for poor people, both rural and urban areas. And government has already set up a fund for the subsidy of electricity on the poor masses of Nigeria. Whereas industries and high consumers of electricity that have all along depended on generators and therefore spending 3, 4, 5 times than any electricity rate from stable supply are now going to have about 11% increase, but the attendant benefit is that as the new power plants now get operational and feed on the national grid, they will have stable power supply. And let me tell you this, if you run an industry, whether it's a newspaper or this television house, for example, which is on generators 24 hours, it is far cheaper. In fact, it will be more than 500% cheaper for you to run on the new tariff with stable power supply than to insist that you go on generators. So those who will have marginal increases are those that are running businesses and have high electricity consumption. But it is far cheaper for them because with the new power plants that are coming on stream, which are about to feed the national grid, as electricity stabilizes, their cost of power will definitely go down by more than 100%. Even though they are paying more for electricity, but it's cheaper than running individual plants. You're running generators, having your own design generators with all the attendant costs. So the new tariff, therefore, is to stabilize, to get the nation ready for the new power regime, which is now private sector driven, but cheaper because of stability, but cheaper for the masses because government is going to subsidize their own rate. So
has that ruled out completely further government involvement in the power sector? Because that would then be that forever that very critical sector has been left in the private hands, and that's not what obtains in other clients. In South Africa, for example, the government has continued to be involved heavily in the power sector. They're building I can't remember where now, something, this power plant is nearing completion. And this power plant, this single power plant is targeted about 5,000 megawatts. Just one power plant alone. And there are work going on, and all owned by government. Are we ruling out further government involvement in the power sector?
No.
With this roadmap?
We do not expect government to hands off any sector of the economy. Government will still be an active player, but not a player obstructing the growth of this sector. You know, for example, most of the power plants in the country are still owned by government. Even the new Mambila power plant the Zungiro power plant that are about to take off, which will generate about 3,000, you had in the president's speech, will generate about 3,000 extra megawatts of electricity. The NIPP projects are still owned by the government. The transmission infrastructure in Nigeria is still owned by the government. So government will now concentrate in those areas that will increase its capacity while leaving the private sector to contribute their own quota to this sector. Now, we believe that leaving transmission in the hands of private people is more efficient. And part of the electricity tariff regime is to supply free meters to all consumers, free prepaid meters. If you notice what goes on now is that somebody comes to take a look at your meter and estimate what you have consumed, sometimes far in excess of the actual consumption. Now with prepaid meters, it will just be like a handset. If you don't call, you don't pay. And so everybody, corruption will come down, efficiency will go up, and there will be stability in power supply over the period. So we must not play politics with everything. Because look at what happened in the telecoms once again. In 2001, when the regulation was taking place, people say, no, we can't leave Nitel, we can't do this. But look at what has happened. From 450 analog lines, we now have close to 100 mobile lines in Nigeria. You no longer need to go to Nitel to seek for... Now we're receiving calls from Nigerians, from villages and so on. The same thing will happen with power. In every major country, Abuja should have a separate company supplying power to us. Lagos should have dedicated companies supplying power just to Lagos. In no country is it done, no major industrial country. Is power just a matter for the private, for the government sector? In our own case, government hasn't been a very, very good actor in this field. And these decades of darkness, which we have been through, I believe Nigerians should give President Goodluck Jonathan the opportunity to implement policies that will bring about sustainable power supply. Because with power alone, this economy will grow double digit. Today, every barbing salon, you set up a barbing salon as a school leaver, you have to buy your own generator. You have a newspaper, you run a generator. And the cost is so huge on the nation. And because it adds up on the prices of goods and services. It generates unemployment. So I believe the power sector is a place where we should drop all politics. Whether you're in NPP, because we learned the other day, the NPP was warning there will be trouble or so. Power, let our people understand that this is a sector, because of our suffering over the years, and the strategic import of power to our economy, this is the time to embrace this power program. Let's drop politics aside. If we do it and fail, then you can accuse us. But, democracy means that a person who has been elected is given an opportunity by citizens to implement an economic and social policy.
Okay.
It is when that policy fails that you can now say, well, maybe we didn't like this, it didn't succeed. But to stop us from implementing policies that will bring about economic growth and prosperity because of partisan politics is wrong.
The maturity period for all of these initiatives in the power sector is between now, the next 1 year or the next 2 years.
I believe honestly that during the last emergency power,
giving everything, because we also have states that have invested heavily in power and waiting for the right atmosphere.
Do you know that
federal level
some of the private power plants that have been completed, they tried feeding the national grid with power, but they could not recover their money from gas supplies. So they ran into a hitch. If these reforms are not comprehensively implemented, it will disrupt the entire infrastructure.
We are talking about the gestation period.
I believe that by the middle of next year, you know, the electricity situation in the country should improve.
Because this power is the connecting rod to every other problem. Because the truth is that an average Nigerian is probably able and willing to do something for himself and his family without necessarily looking in the direction of government employment. So if power is fixed, probably the problem of the nation is more than 50% solved.
The president believes that power is number one. All of us, all Nigerians know that power is our number one problem.
Let's look at all some of the other low-hanging fruits that probably Nigerians can begin to pluck while we wait for those critical areas to be fixed. What are those areas that government is looking at? For example, job creation. How is the government going to mop up those millions of jobless Nigerians that are on the streets?
A few programs.
What government has enumerated so far? You are talking of a few thousand here, a few hundreds here. Yes. It's not really addressing the problem.
I agree with you. Now, let me explain how we're looking at the job sector. Mr. President sees the creation of jobs as a national emergency, as something that we must do to absorb the idle youths in on our streets. Now, the few pilot projects that have been implemented include the UWIN program, which is aimed at creating entrepreneurs out of youths that have business acumen, training them, giving them loans, so that they set up their businesses with special conductors helping them to establish those businesses over an incubation period. And then they will be able to employ other Nigerians. Now, so far, we have gotten more than 2,000 people on this program. Now, the public works program, which Mr. President floated in the wake of the regulation, the SHORE program. Now, the savings from the partial increases in petroleum pump price of PMS, we are now using it to create 370,000 jobs in every state of the Federation, which is what the President again emphasized this morning. Yes. It will include employment of youth. Women will be 30% of the numbers. And then it will be 10,000 per state of the Federation, making 270 plus FCT. But when you take that 370 over the next 3 years, you are going to have about 1,010,000 jobs. But the places where really jobs are being created are in ICT, in agriculture. Because agriculture is where really the low-hanging fruits can easily be plucked by citizens. Before now, agriculture was just looked upon as helping farmers to grow crops. So when government imports fertilizers and supplies tractors, we say we have done agriculture. And supply of fertilizer, the contract scam in fertilizer was the high point of every year's agricultural program, where government will award contracts for tens of billions of naira for contractors to bring in fertilizers, half of which is sand. Only less than 15% of it reaches the actual farmers. Yeah. Now, the new transformation program in agriculture is comprehensive. The new Minister of Agriculture, under the guidance of the President and instruction, has brought a program that is very, very, very efficient and working. For example, in the last 1 year, we have ended the fertilizer scams. This year, government didn't put one single kobo on the ground to supply fertilizer to farmers. What happened was a simple policy in the Minister of Agriculture, in partnership with Minister of Finance and Central Bank and private banks, simply gave guaranteed loans to agro-businesses that usually import fertilizers to sell to their clients. So we brought 30 billion on ground and said, look, here is the loan. We guarantee it, and the banks gave those loans to private importers of fertilizers and agricultural inputs. Government now uses its own subsidy directly to farmers. We took a census of the farmers. So every farmer in every state, we have them, we have their numbers. So we target our subsidy through what we now call electronic wallets. With a GSM, you call, then we get your number, you directly take your own supply from the nearest supplier to you in your area. Now, with this policy, farmers are now getting their fertilizer directly with cutting off government, cutting off middlemen. And this is cheaper, this is more efficient, and this will be year-round. It will not be like, this is the season, government is supplying fertilizer, then in between the year they are off. No. Now the private people will sell their fertilizer directly. And if their fertilizer is of poor quality, the farmer has a right to change. So this means that fertilizers coming into this country now will be quality fertilizers. Okay. The other immediate results from agriculture are, one, we have a value chain development of agriculture now, which is a business. If you want to go into farming, we categorize it into cropping, storage, processing, and marketing. And we have set aside about 500 billion naira fund now for farmers who will go into agriculture as a business. We're also targeting specific crops. Cocoa is getting upbeat attention of government now. Cocoa, oil palm in the south, cotton in northern Nigeria. Rice production is where we already have the fruits being harvested. For example, the Abakaliki rice mills have all been replaced. The president has revived, rehabilitated, and replaced with modern mills, parboiled mills that will give you this better quality rice than you get from Thailand or Vietnam or China or Canada or anywhere.
Yes.
Now the president will soon commission those rice mills in Abakaliki.
Yes.
The same thing is happening in Kano, you know, where again we have another set of mills, and also in Benue State.
Yes.
In Benue State. And we are preparing another 100 large-scale modern rice mills to make sure that Nigeria now becomes self-sufficient.
These new mills, they are private. They will be privately
private sector driven.
Government just guarantee
the loans, provide the loan facilities to the private owners of those mills, guarantee the supply of the right machinery they are owned privately.
Okay.
But they will process that rice already in the market.
Yes.
If you go to market today, you have a choice. You want a further rice, you have it well packaged, well processed.
Yes, but don't you spot some level of inconsistency here? The same government that is allowing all of these things to happen is also still throwing open our borders for rice importation, and that those who are involved in rice importation are also friends of government, who government cannot just close his eyes and say you can't do this business again, because the surest way to promote local consumption of all of this, it's not just enough for the president to tell Nigerians that yes, in the presidential villa he eats ofada rice, he eats cassava bread. It's just not enough, unless there's also a government policy to defend that all Nigerians have to eat all of these things, and the surest way is to ban importation.
I agree with you. Part of the problem we have is that we Nigerians believe that unless some people believe their breakfast should come from England, their lunch should come from Canada, you know, their fish should come from Japan. This country grows a lot of food, and Mr. President is taking the lead by making sure we eat made in Nigerian food in our houses, in the state house, in government functions, in order to encourage in Nigerians this patriotism that is required to grow the economy. A market of 167 million people, if all of us eat gari, eat cassava bread, eat ofada rice, eat yam grown in Nigeria,
the farmers will be.
The automatic impact is that our farmers will be empowered and they will grow more food and more jobs will be created in the agricultural sector. Because the program of the president, who were discussing jobs before we went into this, is to create 3.5 million jobs in agriculture between now and 2015. And it is clearly possible from all that is taking place now. So, in other words, Nigeria must be self-sufficient in food production for us to be a real country with national security as our objective. Now, the rice, the policy is to stop importation of rice by 2015. So what you have said is right, that increasingly between now and 2015, the right tariff regime that will emphasize local production of rice is already being put in place. The same thing for palm oil. You notice that the tariff for palm oil has gone up to 35% now, because we have seen the capacity, local capacity is growing. There are pressures from importers. You know, that is part of the problem of this economy. There are people who simply live on importation, killing our jobs, killing the local economy. Now, it is a big fight between productivity and in internal production of goods and services and importers, who simply get licenses to import things. Now there is a big battle. I have seen in the present Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Kinomi, a determination and patriotism to make sure that our agriculture is driven from local production. It's a battle. We know that Nigeria is also part of the World Trade Organization and rules.
Yes.
So we cannot.
You signed so many treaties, you don't even know the implication. You signed the treaties, the free trade treaties you signed, for example.
Yes.
It's such that you cannot.
No, it's not true. No, there are
close your borders
in each of
and
those,
turn yourself to an island.
I don't think so. In each of those agreements, it does not stop any politically committed nation with the right leadership, such as the one we have now, to increase its own local production. It's going to happen. And at any rate, from what we have seen so far, we have really recorded quite significant improvements in the rice production within this, both production and milling in Nigeria. So we expect Nigerians to follow, because some of these things we can't legislate. Even if you say we stop rice importation, there will still be Nigerians crazy enough to show how rich they are, that they will need to smuggle rice through the border, so that the one eating in their own birthday, on their own birthday, or on Salah or Christmas Day, will be seen to be rice from Thailand, to show how rich they are. But the reality of
they will pay more. They will pay more to get something,
then there will be capital flight.
Then
there will be capital flight. Then we will empower the foreign farmers against our own farmers. We will export our jobs, which our school leavers are living, waiting on, to foreign farms.
So the policy to make Nigerians patronize. Let me see the way the president actually put: grow local, eat local, buy local.
Exactly.
It's still more of a moral persuasion.
Grow local, buy local, eat local.
Yeah, it's still more of a moral persuasion thing.
It's a moral persuasion for the elite. But let me tell you, for the broad majority of Nigerian masses, I come from a typical village. My meal is local. My meal is, and at any rate, when you eat food in your environment, it gives you more health benefits. Because while people have been living in this environment for millions of years. So when you eat the food that you normally ate when you were growing up, you have more health, you have more vitality. But most of the problems we have now is that people are detached from their own dietary roots. They eat things...
Organic food.
Exactly. They eat things from foreign lands, some of which are not attuned to our own health. So it is important for Nigerians to know that we must be attached to our environment. Yes, we cannot say we're an island. We still need things from abroad like every other country does. But I think in terms of food, it is important that we know that this country has the capacity not only to be self-sufficient, but also to export.
The president said this morning that by the end of this year, the government would have earned about $36 million through exporting 1 million metric tons of dried cassava chips and all of that. How am I sure that my poor father in the village, who is being lured back now to the farm to grow cassava, will benefit tremendously from this?
Because it is clear, because of demand for export, there will be increase in prices for farmers. And because of that increase in prices, more production will be required.
Yeah. So what is an average farmer in the village, for example, who's growing cassava? How is it linked to this chain?
Yeah, because the exporters have to go to the village to buy. They have to buy from the farmers. Cassava farmers have been organized into associations since the Obasanjo days. Yeah. Cassava Growers Association all over this country. Now, what happens...
these are not esoteric
No, they are not.
Who live in five-star hotels or just...
No. These are farmers. Nigerians are very good farmers. We have very, very good farmers, local farmers, and those who are investing in agriculture. Now, in terms of cassava, we are still the world leading producer of cassava. That you see, we import starch. We import cassava flour, which was terrible. Now, this is what is changing now. We're investing in processing, so that we can export what we produce. Because you can produce raw things, if you don't process and package them well, you can't sell them abroad. Now all that is taking place. So the farmers will benefit, because as the world market opens to us, definitely one of the direct beneficiaries will be our farmers, who will now be asked to supply more and earn more every year from cassava. In addition to this, the cassava bread has become reality. As you saw today, it is well sought after. Even countries outside Nigeria are now looking for the opportunity to come and learn from us. So we don't want this to be like another Malaysian experience, where other people will come and learn from us, and then we keep eating bread from abroad, and our market becomes a place for other people to import cassava bread. I believe this is an opportunity, to grow this economy. And with the agricultural sector is the best guarantee for massive employment, and that is already the target of this administration.
Okay. Well, what about in the areas of fruits, for example? Because we see import all manners of packaged food products and all of that, whereas there's probably no part of this country that you go to that you don't see all of these things. Is it the oranges that you see in the plateau, Benue Plateau axis, or the tomatoes that you see in parts of the north? or the mangoes that you see in some parts of this country, how is this integrated agricultural transformation
Absolutely.
also linked to all
Yeah,
of this?
because the value chain funding of agriculture now is taking care of this.
Okay.
Before, nobody was thinking about it. We are not thinking about storage as a business. We are not thinking about processing for government to support those who want to go into processing. The present regime is that government has set aside special funds. For example, in Kano and other areas, we had a lot of jobs where a lot of tomatoes and vegetables are produced. Special processing plants will be established by private people with government warranted facility. So all these are being taken because processing is one of the major pillars of the new agricultural policy to add value to what we produce for domestic consumption and for export. And that is indeed the direction now. So in the next 2 years, you are going to see higher activity in terms of food that is processed in Nigeria for the domestic market and for export. Yes.
Yeah, but those categories of farmers, who are they linked to, because the emphasis seems to be on rice, cassava. Those categories of farmers, are they linked to the 500 billion that has been set aside for this purpose?
It's not just
because there's hardly anywhere you go now. Public function, all the bottled wines that are served are produced in South Africa. And these are produced by individual farmers who have been empowered by the government, and they are able to have their small cottage wineries on their farms, and they produce, and they are able to be in business.
Yes, you know, Nigerians are very, very competitive and bright, rugged when it comes to business. What has been lacking in the past is a consistent policy that is visionary with patriotism. Now, you will see that in all the areas that you allow Nigerians the opportunity and they have support, you will see they will compete and stand their ground. Look at cement, for example. We're importing cement. With the new policy regime, Nigeria is now virtually self-sufficient. Dangote alone is producing so much cement, a better. In the next few years, we are going to export cement from this country, which was like a dream before. And again, that's another high area of employment, which is not factored. Because when you talk of employment, people are only looking at government. As the economy is growing and expanding, more and more people are also getting employed in the private sector, in addition to because in every normal country, people employed in government in the minority. It's the private sector that really employs people. So, and that is why the reforms are going to increase the capacity of Nigeria to produce and employ people both in the public and private sector. But the point we are making about government supporting private people is exactly the core, the kernel of the president's policy, not just in agriculture, but the entire transformation agenda is aimed at government standing by the Nigerian businessman and woman, supporting them to grow and compete with their counterparts within and outside the country. And also, mainly, our major problem, our potential is even the domestic market. Because if Nigerian business people can take at least 70% of Nigeria's domestic economy, they will be in huge business. They will be in huge business. So the idea is even to grow our capacity to take charge or, take a substantial share of our domestic market, in terms of consumption, services, and so on. So this is even our major challenge. But again, we should also export, and I've seen a lot of initiatives, Ministry of Trade and Investment, Ministry of Agriculture, working together. We are seeing a lot of initiative to really help our business people to stand up and be counted.
All right. Well, our time is fast running against us. But one area that we cannot but talk about, which is because a lot of criticisms have also come in the way of this government in this area, which is that this government is not just talking about fighting corruption at all, that the government has lost the ability to fight corruption and all of that. What do you say to critics on this issue?
Yes, how would they say so? Let me tell you. Yeah, there have been a few reports about, for example, the oil sector probe, the pension scam, which have come to the fore. And because of partisan nature,
and then the privatization scheme, which the Senate submitted a report long ago.
Yeah, but let me just even take on this too. If you look at the pension scam, it's government investigation that led to the uncovery of the scam. And all of them had been handed over to the ACC for trial. All of them. Now, the oil subsidy probe, which was unduly too politicized, because, such things should be taken out of partisan politics altogether. It was presumed, even before the president could receive the report, there were already, high wire politics and propaganda.
Yeah, because government officials too are not helping matters.
No. Well,
rather than look at the reports in an objective manner, they are busy looking for loopholes in the report.
Not really, because you will see clearly that the president remained quiet. Because as a leader of a country, he was not expected to start talking about a report that had not come to him. But immediately the report came, it was handed over to the AFCC, which is a clear indication that the president is prepared to stand by probity. And the reason why he wanted really to deregulate that sector was to stop the market. Because like I kept emphasizing to Nigerians, this place is clean now, as if there are no ants. But if you drop a bag of sugar on the floor here now, in the next
1 cube.
1 cube, in the next 30 minutes you will see cockroaches and ants will come from all sorts of corners. So long as you allow a subsidy regime, like the one we have in the downstream sector, you will continue to multiply incidences of abuse in that system. So the thing, the regulation itself is to wipe out places where some Nigerians take advantage of the public thing and opportunity to steal from the public. We have done so in fertilizers. The president intends to do so in the downstream sector. But over and above this, we have had a check on our salary system, which the president ordered. These are some of the quiet things that have been going on. The biometric auditing of all salaries in the public sector has produced significant results. We have seen now that a lot of loopholes existed in these areas, and actions have been taken in several key sectors. Now, I believe that from the reorganization that I've seen in we are seeing in ICPC, as well as in the AFCC, Nigeria should hold on a little, because I believe this president is determined to fight corruption, and he will do it in a systematic way without the grandstanding and populist proclamations, which were done in the past without necessarily any efficiency. But let us see how we reorder the system to trap those, to make it inhospitable for anybody that is engaged in slaves. And that is the system that we should go. In addition to this, you see all this talk that have come now. When the cases go to court for investigation, very few Nigerians would like to come out and testify. They will call people manner of names on the pages of newspapers. When the time now comes for them to come out and be counted by bringing the evidence, you will not see them. How can a president that signed the Freedom of Information Bill that empowers citizens to go directly to any institution to look for any document, ask for records? If the law is already there, it's not only journalists, every Nigerian. You cannot say that, because the Freedom of Information Act is a huge anti-corruption bill. So I think gradually maybe we have not taken advantage of all the systems that we have. But we're heading there.
All right, we just have to leave it here now. In 10 seconds, you have to assure me that you'll be able to do that. Your goodwill message to Nigerians on this occasion of democracy.
My goodwill message to Nigerians is, let's show patriotism and commitment to the country. Let's respect and develop the country by uniting as a people, no matter our tribes and religions. Let us have peace in this country. And peace can only come from the free will of citizens. It cannot just be legislated. We need peace. We need unity. We need patriotism and commitment. And let every Nigerian resolve that no matter where you are, a cleaner, a minister, a journalist, a farmer, let us stand up and do our work every day, such that our conscience and our God will acknowledge that we have done our best for the country.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
You can put it better. The Honorable Minister of Information, Comrade Abaram Bako, has been with us for the past 55 minutes on this very special edition of Focus Nigeria, on this very special day to Nigeria and to Nigerians, Democracy Day, May 29. Thank you so very much, Honorable Minister. Happy Democracy Day.
Thank you, Gwanda.
All right, happy Democracy Day, Nigerians. Whatever you do today, do remember that this country can only get better when we, as individuals, resolve to make it better. My name is Benga Aruliba. I'll see you around.
AIT, sharing the African experience.
That the effect of a nullification of a thing, not necessarily an election, the effect of nullification of a thing is to completely wipe out, obliterate, remove, undo, erase, or render it ineffective. Why must Nigerians pay the crime that has been perpetrated by this cabal?
Represent the future of the Gulf states, children and young people. When the oil and gas reserves start to decline, they will keep the place going. Everywhere in the region, schools and universities are springing up. There's a great thirst for education.
It is important to connect the higher education with the future after oil and gas.
We should have, the education first, and then we can, start any factories, any industry.
Modern societies are taking shape in a hurry, and Western influence is growing. Between ketchup and headscarf, women students at universities are insisting on their rights.
No, we can't.
So we show them that we can?
Yeah, we can't. More like challenging them.
Standing on their own feet at last, without help from outside. That's the goal on the Gulf.
I don't believe that we reach the point that we don't need the help from others. No, we still need the help, but it is definitely less than 30 years ago.
No city on earth is growing as fast as Dubai. For years now, the new centre in the middle of the desert has been one big construction site. The metropolis stands for a vision of a successful cosmopolitan Arab society. Just a dream? For years, Fabian Biermann has been earning good money on the Gulf. The young manager thinks the rich oil states are just at the threshold of a quite new development.
The boom we're seeing here has been financed by the oil wealth of the United Arab Emirates. But that can only be a solution in the medium term. In the long run, the only solution is manufacturing, and that means education. I think the government has realized this. Large industrial estates are being developed, the largest in the world.
Fabian Biermann works for a local firm selling plastic pipes for water and gas to the major construction companies. The gigantic building sites are mostly managed by Western experts. But not even the rich Gulf states can afford to have their work done only by foreigners forever.
These projects, of course, create a huge need for qualified people, for skilled workers, and they aren't there. In other words, I think there's a real need for training centers like we have in Europe, where craft skills are really taught properly.
On the way to an inspection. This building site, like most others, has virtually no local workers. A gas pipe is welded. The workers from India and Pakistan never had any proper training until the German manager decided to do something about it. In the old days, these pipes sprung leaks because they weren't properly welded. Things should change now. A German training center has started a first course for welders. So far, the only such establishment in the whole Gulf region. The idea is a success. Regionally based firms are sending their workers to the expensive course from far and wide. Fabian Biermann's own company has provided the premises and the necessary technology. Many of the ordinary welders are migrant workers from Asia and are right at the bottom of the social ladder. After completing the course, says Fabian Biermann, they return to their places of work with far more self-assurance. But increased numbers of local engineers and architects are also taking up the offer. Many of their universities still look down on practical work. Training to German standards is still the exception. For the Saudi site engineer Mamoun Al-Hawamdi, initiatives like this are a first step.
Petrol is not going forever. It's not going for infinity, okay? Okay, we are looking for to improve our economy. We are looking for making other basic for our country. I'm looking for making a great economy based in science, based in industry, not based on only petrol. To get this way, to make a good economy, not based on petrol, not based on only petrol, based on industry, agriculture, everything, we have to educate our children. Science, because it's the gate, science and languages, you know, this is the idea. We have to build our economy.
For decades, oil and gas alongside tourism have been the main sources of income. The consequences are far-reaching. Where 60 years ago life was almost medieval, the people now enjoy luxurious affluence. Many have got used to the idea that their standard of living is assured. They believe that they can stay rich without great effort. In the expensive shopping malls, the descendants of the Bedouin often keep to themselves. Very few have to work to survive. Anyone living on the Gulf today has learned an important lesson. Money solves most problems. Work is something done by foreigners, who now form the majority. In this local firm too, most of the development team are Europeans. It's a situation the managers Ahmed Al-Mahairi and Günther Allmeyer would like to change. They want to see more well-trained Arabs on the local job market.
UAE and the Gulf is young nations, and development takes time. And Europe was not developed in 10 years. It was developed during the last 2 centuries. So I think the theme for the Gulf, we have the capabilities, we have the leadership, and we have the education that also will, I think, make this happen.
They only have to be a bit more focused, let's say, and admire more locals to get a technical education and not just in commercial education. So technicians are by far too low here. So that might be a challenge for them to attract locals more to study in these directions.
Western universities have long since discovered the Gulf region as a lucrative market. The Technical University of Aachen in Germany opened a branch in Oman in 2008. The young institution, the German University of Technical Education, is still in its infancy. Stringent entry requirements ensure that only really motivated students apply. These young geologists will, it's hoped, later be able to carry out research on their own.
And what do you think?
Practical teaching in town planning on the beach for the first-year students. It might look like a relaxed day out, but it's been carefully thought through.
And we meet at 4 o'clock.
The pupils of Nikolaus Knebel and Kilian von Kresing are to design a model for a pavilion. The German teachers from the German university, known as GUTEC for short, want to stimulate their creativity. Until now, education for most of the students meant a mindless learning by rote. They still react rather helplessly to the unfamiliar instructions.
One thing is important. We already noticed in the first practicals that they kept asking, is this right? There's this need to please the teacher, and that's what we want to avoid at all costs. There's no right and wrong way to do it, just the question of whether they develop their own ideas. In that sense, I think our teaching is a bit different, because this sort of freedom is something they're not used to. They're thrown in at the deep end when they come here.
We are trying to draw the students out. The potential is there, but they don't realize it. We do. We try to squeeze out the many ideas that are actually there. We help them a little, but we don't actually do anything.
Right, that looks good.
Motivation is important. A whole generation has to get used to the idea of thinking and acting for themselves.
Okay. Now you start digging. Try to think it more integratively. Think one second.
Local problems can only be solved by the Arabs themselves, not by foreign experts. The two German professors are convinced of that, and they say the students are learning fast. The refectory at the little university. For many, especially older people in Oman, one aspect is still a sensation. Men and women eating and studying together. Even though the first years still often sit apart, the young people will, it's hoped, soon get used to working in teams. Many parents, like those of Nora al-Balushi and her friend, could afford to send their children to a top-class university abroad, but they prefer to have their daughters educated on the spot.
Well, as girls, we think that...
We love challenge. We like, you know, you can't do this. Our family, like, you can't do this just forget. No, we can.
So we show them that we can.
Yeah, we can. It's more like challenging them. We can.
Guys are laid back. They don't need to prove anything here. We do. So we show them. At the end, we live in a social environment that's dominated with the male thoughts and how women shouldn't be so open. But it's changing. I have to point that out. But other guys, which I do talk to sometimes, they show that they don't allow their sisters to go abroad. They wouldn't like it because a girl has to stay close to her family and she can't leave without an escort. So we still have these opinions here. And unfortunately, some girls also think that. They think that we can't do it without a male. But it's kind of, they're brainwashed in a way. But even they're changing.
An excursion to the Oman mountains, a research trip in their own country. Even that is a new experience for many.
And C, so basically
divergence.
It's It's no coincidence that in this geology course there are only girls examining the layers of rock. The course was much too much like hard work for their male counterparts. They dropped out. The women, by contrast, see this training as a unique chance. They are benefiting from the opportunities provided by the foreign university in their own country. After some shyness to start with, they get used to working with their German teacher. The results are positive. Only for a long time the students couldn't understand why Gustav Hoffmann wanted to be addressed by his first name.
At school we need them to express ourselves as university. Any topic we'd like to discuss with a teacher himself or herself, they'd always find it as a personal attack to them if we disagreed. So having teachers saying, no, we want you to discuss with us, we want you to present your opinions and express whatever is going on in your mind, it's much comfortable for us to do that for them. And of course, by just calling them their names, it's even easier.
Yeah, that's what we want. We want you to be critical students, and that's really practice in that way. But we want you to think, and that's also why we sometimes tell you things which are not true, because I just want to say, no, that can't be.
Yeah.
So, but after a year, we got you there.
We respect you, but we don't fear you, just like at school.
Good. I think Sarah fears me.
The future of the Arab states will be decided not least at their own universities. So far, few are encouraging a culture of open debate. Behind closed doors, a battle is raging between conservatives, liberals and fundamentalists. After all, what's at stake is nothing less than a redefinition of Arab identity. For this reason, too, education in the Gulf states is still an explosive political topic. And no one likes talking about it openly on camera. The young people are still trapped in the contradiction between the traditionalist worldview and the knowledge that reaches them from the West. For German and international universities alike, their commitment on the Gulf is a risk, and competition between them is stiff. The German Gutek still has to make a name for itself in Oman. Time and again, its PR chief has to visit high schools to drum up interest among potential students. What's needed here is diplomacy, patience and a good sense of the right tone. For Western universities, it's a tightrope act between high profit margins and the concrete possibilities offered by the host country. To the United Arab Emirates. In the capital Abu Dhabi, the work is done, as it always has been, by the many foreigners. It will be years before the vision of the sheikhs is fulfilled and the Gulf states can stand on their own feet. Until then, it'll be mainly foreign experts who take the responsibility, and that includes public sector tasks. Orland Kopp is one of more than 100 Germans setting up a locally manned fire brigade in the UAE. It's no easy task in a country which had no street index until recently. The idea is for the Germans to gradually train enough locals to perform all the tasks themselves in a few years' time. In spite of good pay, too few people are coming forward for this dangerous job. Most of the firefighters come from neighboring countries, such as the relatively poor Oman. An exercise on the training ground. Every day, the young Arabs have to prove how much they've already learned. The teams still have a mixed composition of firefighters from Germany, Austria and Turkey. In an emergency, there's no room for mistakes. The Germans have to push soon. They will have to deal with dangerous situations themselves. Their future sphere of operations makes very special demands. The Emirates have some of the world's tallest skyscrapers. Roland Kopp is satisfied with this group's level of training. But in spite of their qualifications, many young firefighters will later transfer to the police. Technically demanding, physically strenuous jobs are not popular. Too many people don't need to work hard, but a change of attitude is needed.
Das ist die Zielsetzung, dass
the goal is for this country to be run by the locals, the citizens, in all areas, whether we're talking about finance management or firefighting or the police. In other words, wherever foreigners are currently employed, the aim is for Arabs to take over. They must.
Suddenly, an emergency for Roland Kopp's firefighters.
Right, we have a fire on the Mororo Road, and I'm going to fight my way through the traffic to get there. The Al-Fala Brigade have turned out, and the call came from a colonel, from our Arab colonel. If he makes the call, then I assume it's something big. Only, as you see, we're moving no faster than the fire engines. They're not getting through.
The winter rains in Abu Dhabi. By local standards, the city centre is flooded. Just a few more minutes and we're there. For the young firefighters, every working day in Abu Dhabi is good for a surprise. Especially in the newly built industrial estates, fires are constantly breaking out in factories because safety precautions are simply ignored. A blaze has started in a large warehouse on the outskirts of the city. One thing is already clear: this operation will take many hours. Roland Kopp, the German head of operations, can only wait and hope for the best. He too has learned patience on the Gulf. For more than 20 years, Siegfried Knoll has been in Kuwait training teachers for technical professions. On behalf of the German Technical Aid Organization, the GTZ, he runs the Schulwijk Industrial Center, the country's largest training center for practical trades. Above all, the Gulf states have to train their own teachers better. This is the only way to achieve the next quality leap, thinks Siegfried Knoll. But in Kuwait, as in the other Gulf states, many teaching jobs are not held in high enough regard, and above all, not well enough paid. Another problem is that even talented students prefer a job in the civil service to developing their own initiative. Very few people start their own businesses. The GTZ, for whom Siegfried Knoll works, is by now reasonably satisfied with the quality of training. And yet project leader Josef Fischer still sees much to be done.
We can't transfer any system one-to-one. The framework conditions are not present to the extent we have them in Germany.
Whether someone goes to college or to the university, their goal is still a job in the public sector. At the moment, there's still enough money to pay for this, but even in Kuwait, they're perfectly well aware that this won't go on forever, and that in the distant future, the Kuwaitis will also have to be active in the private sector. And so people have to be prepared and trained for this.
Maybe the real change in the Arab states on the Gulf has only just begun. The change of attitude among locals and migrant workers alike. In the next few years, the Gulf states will be investing billions in the training of their people. A lucrative business, maybe for Fabian Biermann too. The topic of education just won't leave the young manager alone. Together with the German Chamber of Trade and Industry, he is now developing training courses to German standards for commercial professions. In the past, the people here provided for themselves as nomads, but the region has always been an important center of trade. A visit to a museum that was once a school, the first ever in the United Arab Emirates.
I often hear that Dubai has no proper history and not much culture, which in a sense is correct, because until only a few decades ago there was just desert here, and culture was the art of survival. Here you can really create something, build something up. In a way, that's no longer possible in Europe, because there a complete system already exists and it only needs to be maintained.
For more than 1,000 years, there were only Quran schools on the Gulf, and then came the sudden leap into the modern age in the 21st century. Fabian Biermann is convinced that there is a noticeable willingness to change on the Gulf.
It's very hard to say what the region will look like in 20 years, but I'm convinced that in the next 5 years there will be huge developments. I'm not just talking about Dubai, but about the whole Gulf region, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, where there are major changes already. We have a very large market in Saudi Arabia, and there's a certain amount of movement there, and we must watch out that we don't miss the boat. It would be a pity if we Germans weren't in there up at the front in the training field.
The reserves of fossil fuels have made the Gulf region wealthy. Now the region is starting to tap the resources of knowledge and education, the new raw material, for the time when the wells run dry.
Why you the drug with this God don't give me? Number one now. Oh God has blessed, no man can talk. The song from the Prince of the Niger Delta. Come on. Africa.